from Daytona, USA. Come on.
Hello everyone, welcome live to 3Y TV and tonight's broadcast of the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Series, and we have the Firecracker 125 here from the Daytona International Speedway. And this isn't the new Daytona, this is the old Daytona, circa 2007, with all the bumps and all the glory with the 1987 NASCAR Cup Series cars. And it is going to be a lot of fun here tonight. I'm Peter Short. Joining me in the booth here tonight is Greg Rentz. And Greg, this is one race when I looked at the calendar for the Boswell's Country Roads Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series here. I saw this and I went, oh my goodness, this race is going to be chaos. They're 210 miles an hour off into turn number 1 and turn number 3. All the bumps. What are you expecting to see tonight?
I'm expecting to see a wild 50-lap race, Peter. This was the first track that these Cup cars were at in the NASCAR Legends Series, which is the official iRacing series of these cars. It was this track that this series made its debut at, and oh my goodness, is this place fun to wheel one of these things around. These drivers are going to be carrying upwards of 210 miles an hour into the corners, like you mentioned, Peter. And that's going into the corners. That's not even counting how fast they're going to be on the straightaway, and these things are going to be wicked loose through the tri-oval trying to get this thing settled down. I am so excited to watch this race unfold tonight because these things are going to put on a show tonight.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, we have seen some fantastic stuff here in the practice session. I've been watching it now for quite some time, and it's a Will Worcester Racing 1-2 currently. Will Worcester leading over Tyler Seville, and the Alexander Pelican in the number 25 machine sits in third. And what about the fourth place machine in practice? That would be Larry Orn sporting a Dale Earnhardt GM Goodwrench Service Plus machine. Great to see that black number 31 out there on the racetrack, and Jackson Van Volkenberg rounding out the top 5 here in this session. But I'll tell you what, Greg, what we saw 2 weeks ago at the Charlotte Motor Speedway was a spectacular race. No cautions in that race. We saw a race where it was a straight-up battle. 125 miles around Charlotte Motor Speedway. One pit stop We saw some different tire strategies. We saw the number 98 machine, Sam Maxwell, come home with second. He only took 2 tires in a 125-mile race. Unbelievable. And, of course, Stephen Hollingsworth, race number 2 winner, getting the job done. In fact, Hollingsworth comes into tonight as the points leader. Let's see if we can bring up the points graphic, because Hollingsworth is the only driver to get 2 top 5s in the first 2 rounds of the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series. And there you see it on the board, 12 points over the number 1 machine of Jason Stewart, who got himself a podium back at Charlotte. He had a different strategy, Greg. Remember that? We all thought, what is he going to do? Is he going to make it on fuel? Is he going to run out of fuel? What's that number 1 machine going to do? Is he going to try and go the whole distance? But he decided to take that two-tire strategy, much like the number 98 machine did of Sam Maxwell, and he was able to get himself a podium. I mean, it was a great race. And what about Tyler Seville? Sitting 5th in points, he blew a tire coming to the white flag at Charlotte Motor Speedway. I mean, that race had all that you could ask for, and I'm expecting to see a lot more here, similar here at Daytona.
And going back for a moment on what you were talking about with Jason Stewart, that was not the first time he's done that at Charlotte Motor Speedway, Peter. He did that in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Series earlier in the year as well. In the big race, 200 laps at Charlotte, he tried that same thing and it almost worked out for him. So Jason Stewart has become known for some gambles. We saw it this past Tuesday in the Hacksaw Premier Series at Kentucky. They put on a show there, and Jason Stewart, he did the strategy thing again, made it work, and came home with another podium. So he's one who we know is going to take a shot if he gets it. So don't be surprised to see him try some different moves here today as he sits, I believe, looking at the charts, he is 6th on the charts in practice in his checker flag PC number 1. As there you see another look at the points. Stephen Hollingsworth, the Charlotte winner, leading the way. But Peter, we've seen it out of Jason Stewart a few times now to take a gamble, but the Will Worthler Racing guys top of the charts going into practice, but looks like we have switched over to qualifying, so we're going to see cars on track just momentarily for their qualifying session.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun to ride on board with one of these drivers as they work their way around this old Daytona International Speedway. We see the current day Daytona very, very smooth. I mean, they repaved it just after 2007, put on a very, very nice surface, very smooth. Pretty much any car nowadays can run the modern day Daytona flat out. But these 1987 machines, they can't run it flat out, but they definitely can't run this version of Daytona flat out because of all those bumps. And we're going to be highlighting them all night long as you see Will Worcester in the number 29 machine roll off pit road. Here is the number 66 machine of Ed Bray. Got Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson on the hood of that race car. And you can just see that suspension travel as he hits those bumps. Let's see if we can go back on board. And one thing we were talking about, Greg, prior to the show is the fact that they're going to be getting loose in the trial. They're going to be getting loose in the corner. Very small rear spoilers on these cars. I mean, not the levels of downforce you see nowadays, and you can just see how that number 66 machine is battling with that steering wheel going through the corner. Gets a little bit of respite down the backstretch, but this is really, really cool to see, Greg.
Yeah, so much fun to watch these cars wheel this thing around at Daytona. You see right there. There you see the Daytona banking on the gyro cam. So much fun. And Peter, you are fighting this thing the entire way around. The bumps make it so difficult to drive on the straightaways. And then when you're carrying that much speed into the corner, it just wants to snap around on you. And you see there just how difficult it is to drive these things. That's what's making this race so much fun. As Lee Staples takes his time, he is 4th at a 45.745. Quick time right now is kind of a interesting one. That 31 that you see on the screen right now, Larry Orn. And Peter, we were talking about this. That is the classic Dale Earnhardt GM Goodwrench paint scheme, albeit number 31 on it. But what do you notice on the nose of that car? It's a Chevy decal, but that's not a Chevy nose, is it?
No, one of the cool things about iRacing is you can just slap another car's template on a race car. So that is a Chevy Lumina template on a Ford Thunderbird body. So you can actually, if you look very, very closely, you can make out where it says Thunderbird on the bottom of it. But I gotta say, it looks really darn good from afar, Greg, and it's cool to see the levels of creativity in the iRacing community, as it looks like Larry Orn has put in his qualifying time. In fact, he is currently top of the charts here, Greg. Look at that. That number 31 machine showing some muscle over the number 11 of Tyler Seville, who was second place in practice.
Yeah, and going back real quick to the Lumina body, I saw it a couple of other times on training paints. You see the Days of Thunder cars on Fords, which of course those were known Luminas. I've also started to see a couple Pontiacs pop up on the Thunderbird body. So iRacing painters getting very creative with these new cars, and can't wait to see what else they come up with. And who knows, maybe we'll get the Lumina and the Pontiac Grand Prix eventually on the iRacing server. But on board again here, riding along with a couple different cars here, and you just see just how much banking is here at Daytona and how much speed they're carrying on this track.
Yeah, you can see that speed down in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, folks. 199 miles an hour, just cracking 200 miles an hour on board with the 01 of Brad Lee. Now we're going to see that. We're going to see speeds upwards of 210 miles an hour once they get in the draft. And I'm just curious to know what speeds we are going to see once they're all in a pack out there. And I don't really know if we're going to see all too much pack racing. These old cars with so little downforce, they can get spread out here even at Daytona, Greg.
Yeah, in those races that we saw in the first day, and they came back here later in the week during week 13 of the previous season, a lot of the fields got spread out in the early stages, and it was really hard to get back into a rhythm. And Peter, something that could very, very much come into play here tonight, and was coming into play in those races both at Daytona and Talladega, there's a little bit of a difference of horsepower in these cars. The Chevy Monte Carlo has 650 horsepower. The Ford Thunderbird only has 625 horsepower. So it's a little bit different with these cars. So will we see the Chevys pull away from the Fords on these long straightaways with the extra horsepower?
Well, we've definitely seen a lot of Chevrolets, haven't we? I mean, the last two races we've been to have been very much dominated by a Chevrolet field. So it'd be interesting to see how that pans out here tonight. Of course, a lot of people are saying that the Ford Thunderbird has a little bit better coefficient of drag, so it's a little bit more slippery in the air versus the Chevrolet, but the Chevrolet definitely has the slightly better engine when it comes to the horsepower department. So we'll have to see how that affects things. Currently, the 202 machine of Stephen Hollingsworth in a Chevrolet, Larry Orn as well, Chevrolet, Tyler Seville, Chevrolet, but the fourth place driver right now, Greg, that's Sam Maxwell. He's in a Ford, so currently he's the highest placed Ford here in the qualifying session, but we have about 4 minutes left until we get them down onto the grid. Most of the drivers have turned in their qualifying lap time, but Greg, we do have a few drivers out there probably trying to get some additional practice laps. It just shows how tricky this racetrack is. One of those drivers is the 01 machine of Brad Lee. You also have the 148 machine there, Howard Struther Jr. in that machine, got Wrangler on the hood. So we got another Dale Earnhardt inspired scheme here tonight, and that 148 machine working his way off into turn number 3 right now, going a little bit up the racetrack to where that white stripe is dashed up around the high side. We're going to see a lot of that here tonight, Greg.
I watched World Burn, Peter, put a Dale Earnhardt paint scheme on the track, but throw a number 24 on it and just watch what happens. But it's so much fun to watch these things run around at Daytona. As you're seeing the 148, Howard Strother Jr., 18th out of 19 right now. So looking for some more speed out of that 148 come race time, because it is, or he has done both his qualifying laps. 19 cars have taken time. 2 more cars in the session that have not taken the time yet. I believe this is one of them right now, Todd Kirkwood, in the number 86 on track. Yes, it is. He will be, I believe, the 20th car to take time. The only other driver in the field, Peter, a little bit of a cool story. We got a Arca Menards driver in the field tonight. Alex Pelican out of the Venturini Racing camp is in the session tonight.
Yeah, Alexander Pelican, of course, I believe he's one of the crew guys for the Venturini team, but Alexander Pelican in that number 25 machine. He was a staple in the American Sim Racing Series, Hacksaw PC's Premier Series last season, but this year, not in the Premier Cup Series anymore, but he is, of course, limelighting here in the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Series. So great to have him in the field. Todd Kirkwood in the number 86 machine in a Ford Thunderbird. He's going around this racetrack right now. And I'll tell you what, Greg, you know, the fact that Larry Orn is running that Chevy Lumina body, that template on that race car, kind of threw me for a loop, but technically Larry Orn is racing a Ford Thunderbird, so that would be the second place machine. So he's technically the highest placed Ford Thunderbird, but has the Chevy Lumina template on that race car. Here comes the number 86 machine of Todd Kirkwood, trying to get his qualifying lap time in right now. Working his way now off into turn number 1 and 2. Got a little bit of right side damage on his first qualifying lap, so that actually disqualified that lap time. We'll have to see whether or not he can pick it up here, but I'll tell you what, Greg, looks like he's got a little bit of right side damage. That won't help here in qualifying.
No, definitely not, Peter. And he's going to be very thankful that he gets a new car and gets that damage repaired for the start of the race. And he dives now into turn number 3. But Todd Kirkwood trying to get a lap in. And this is unfortunate that the lap he gets is only going to be his second lap, because the first lap was definitely going to be something here as Kirkwood comes through the trial. But believe he should get a lap this time. Yes, he does. He will go 17th out of 45.581. So deep in the field in his Ford Thunderbird. But plenty of time, 50 laps to get going, as Daytona International Airport right behind the track is active, and it's so cool. That's one of the neatest little details on iRacing, Peter. The airport right behind Daytona is active. Planes take off and land in the middle of a race. It's so cool. This little detail that was thrown out there for this track, both this incarnation of Daytona and the new one.
Yeah, it's funny because one of my other commentators who used to commentate with me, Cameron Rich, he would always comment on that fact, and he always comment that the Boeing 737 is probably coming in at about 200 knots. And if anyone knows anything about civil or commercial aviation, 200 knots for a 737 on landing is a little bit too fast, about 60 knots too fast to be exact. But you can see the checkered flag has been thrown here on the qualifying session. We'll get over into the race session, figure out who started on the pole, and go through the starting lineup. And Greg, it's not that long of a race here tonight. Only 50 laps, 125 miles. So starting up front could be important for this race. And let's see, Greg, if you can take us down to tonight's starting lineup for the Firecracker 125 here at Daytona for the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series.
We're going to start on the pole with the winner 2 weeks ago at Charlotte, Stephen A. Hollingsworth. With the Ford Lumina on the outside, Larry Orn in the number 31. That just sounded unnatural saying it that way. Tyler Seville, former winner this season in the Hacksaw Premier Series, rolls off third. Sam Maxwell to his outside in fourth. You'll find Jason Stewart, who gambled big at Charlotte, paid off with the podium. We'll start alongside Jackson Van Volkenberg in sixth. Will Worthler in the number 29 with Lee Staples to his outside. Rounding out the top 10, Ed Bray in the 66 and the 01 of Brad Lee.
In the 11th position is Brian Yazik at the number 55 HPPSimulation.com Ford. We saw him get the win here on Tuesday night on 3 Wide TV. Jay Crable will be starting to his outside in the number 87 machine. Got a victory lane quick oil change on that race car here tonight. Starting in the 13th position, Jeremy Banning, and to his outside, Cody Spiker. Chris Keenan will roll off 15th, Tim Knott 16th, Todd Kirkwood 17th, Jordan Barry 18th, Howard Strother Jr. 19th, Michael Whiting 20th, and running at your field, like you can see right there, is Alex Pelican in his number 25 machine. But Greg, they're out there on their one singular pace lap. And I'll tell you what, I've been very, very impressed with Stephen Hollingsworth in that 202 Folgers Chevy. We saw him back at North Wilkesboro. Very, very strong run there. And then back that up, of course, with the win at Charlotte Motor Speedway. And putting it on the pole here tonight as your points leader. Going to be fantastic to see what he can do tonight in that race car. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been so much fun watching these guys develop in this series. And Peter, it's guys that, yes, we see a lot of them in the Hacksaw Premier Series, but there's several names in this race that we do not see every Tuesday night. So that's what makes the series extra special, is seeing these guys that we don't get to see on a normal basis here on 3YTV come out and be competitive like Hollingsworth. We've seen a couple of different guys that we don't see in the Hacksaw Premier Series run strong in this series. That's what makes this series so much fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It is a lot of fun to run this series, and especially with the fact that these 87 cars are relatively new to the service and everyone was just so giddy to get them. And now we're about to go racing at Daytona. Green flag in the air. Now we're racing at Daytona, 125 miles, 50 laps around this racetrack. And already Stephen Hollingsworth up at the front. Oh, we have a collision in the back. And I do believe it might be the number 19 machine, Cody Spiker. I do believe in the Dynaco blue number 19 machine going sliding through the infield with the number 87 of Jay Crable, and caution flag has been thrown here. Brian Yazik in the 55 machine also involved. Let's see what happened here, Greg.
Contact right there at the start. Did Crable perhaps blow an engine, which led to that, as you see right there, Spiker spinning down, nowhere to go for Yazik. So wondering if perhaps Crable may have missed a shift there or something. Not sure what caused that, but definitely would you say that's about 0 out of 10 on ways you want to start this race?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're Jay Crable. You saw it right there. I think as he was trying to hit the third gear, it went up into first. Let's see if we can go on board with him right here and listen for the engine. Yeah, you hear it right there. That is a money shift. That's what we'd like to call it, because all the money that went into that engine, boom, it is up in smoke. And just like that, we're under caution. Got to give a shout out to Gingerbot in the chat saying he should have had an oil change before the race at Victory Lane Quick Oil Change. Didn't last all too long. That's a tough break for the 55 machine, Brian Yazik. We rode on board with him right there. Of course, the Dynaco blue number 19 machine, Cody Spiker, also involved in that one. So 3 cars here early on, Greg, receiving damage. I believe that is going to be the end of the race for Jay Crable. We're also seeing a couple of drivers have the glitch in iRacing that if a caution flag comes out before the car gets to the start finish line, some cars can kind of get trapped a lap down. So the race officials are having to work through that as well.
And Jay Crable already in the chat, 2 words. Well then. So tough break for Jay Crable. And I know your pain, man. That happened to me in a truck race at Dover not too long ago. Under caution, I was downshifting to try to get slowed down for caution speed. Went to try to get the second, and it jumped right back over second into first. So that was it for me. So I know exactly how you feel right now, Jay. Sorry about that, and we hope to have you back in the series next time out. But Peter, that's definitely a tough break to start it off. Cody Spiker, and then this is another thing that the Cars Tour, or I'm sorry, the 87 cars have that I really love about it. Cody Spiker is running one of several Cars movie inspired schemes that we've seen on the service here. We did a West Coast Smash to Pass race a while ago at the Charlotte Legends Oval, and myself and Dylan Huffines reran Cars movie inspired schemes, and it actually started a trend. A lot of guys, for the next time we used the 87 cars, went with Cars movie inspired schemes. And that's honestly my favorite thing about this series, is seeing all the different looks. You see some old school ones, like right here. That's the 23 of Jackson Van Volkenberg running number 28 on your screen. The Cale Yarborough throwback. You've got the Tim Richmond throwback in front, Dale Earnhardt. Then you've got your own ones back there with Tyler Seville, Sam Maxwell. So many different things that you can do in this car, and just so inspiring to run old school paint schemes, new school paint schemes, and movie paint schemes. Just so many different options you can run with this car.
Yeah, without a doubt. And one of my favorite things about iRacing is you do get to see a lot of creativity in the cars that you race against, you know? I've seen some absolutely amazing paint schemes, and I've been lucky enough to know some people over the years who have transitioned from designing fictitious race cars in simulations, both back in the NASCAR Racing 2003 days and in the iRacing service, that they've actually gone on to paint real-life race cars. A friend of mine, he used to design race cars for Robbie Gordon. I've known another one who has designed on and off for teams such as, I think it was Eric McClure's team or Morgan McClure's team. It's pretty cool to see that these people who have the talent get recognized in sim racing and then go on to do bigger things from sim racing. And you hear that in multiple ways. I mean, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s old spotter, he came from iRacing. Dale Jr. met him playing iRacing, ended up being his NASCAR Cup Series spotter. So, sim racing, it is, a lot of drivers do it for fun, and it is a lot of fun, and there's very high levels of competitiveness in it. But at the same time, it is a stepping stone for some people to make it into the real world. But Greg, nonetheless, the pace car lights are off. We're going to get set to go back to green flag racing, and hopefully we can make it into turn number 1 this time. I know Jay Crable's probably hanging his hat, put his head in his hands, and hopefully we see you back in a couple weeks' time, Jay, for the next round when we go to Pocono for the Tricky Triangle race. That should be a lot of fun. But Greg, pace car about to head down pit road.
Hollingsworth will take him to the green once again. We're going to try it again at Daytona. Coming to start lap number 5, picking up speed. Sam Maxwell getting right up on the back bumper of Larry Orton as they come up and take the green flag. And Hollingsworth, winner at Charlotte 2 weeks ago, comes up and shuts the door on Orton. Peter, we made it to turn 1 under green as Tyler Seville coming up now on Hollingsworth. And look at this, 3 Fords in the battle right here. We talked about the Chevys maybe having the horsepower advantage, but the Fords making do with the draft like you talked about there. As here's the 28 on your screen, 23 on your ticker of the Jackson Van Volkenburg entry, and he shoots up to the outside, ducks in behind Sam Maxwell, who's giving a big shove to Larry Orton into turn 3.
Yeah, you see already a couple of drivers starting to favor that high groove, but coming out of turn number 4, Larry Orton, he's got a run in that number 31 machine, and he will lead the lap, so give that one to Larry Orton as Sam Maxwell throwing up a couple of sparks out the right side of that number 98 Ford Thunderbird, and he gets wicked loose. In turn number 1, we're going to see that a lot here tonight, Greg, and we mentioned it in the pre-race that it happens here, but another thing that we need to mention about this race here tonight, there's no yellow line rule. This is old Daytona, old rules. They can go down there if they want to. I'm sure a couple of drivers will be mindful of whether or not that leads to a caution. But there's no yellow line here tonight, so we're going to see a couple of drivers do that. As Stephen Hollingsworth in the 202 has put himself back out front. Lee Staples in the 26 machine is around, coming out of turn number 4. No caution yet, and he is into the inside wall in the StepTire.com machine. Will he get that machine back going? Hopefully he will. But I just saw a spinning number 26 machine coming out of the corner. Let's see if there was any contact or whether or not he just got loose. Looks like he just got too high. And Lee Staples going around and into the inside wall heavy. That is going to be really unfortunate for that machine. Hopefully he can get it on pit road for some repairs, but not the way Lee Staples wanted to start tonight's race.
No, he's got the 26 rolling again. He's limping it back around to the pits, but back up front, Larry Orton leading the way. And you think it's fun seeing them loose in the corners. Just wait till you see him get loose right here in the tri oval. Those things are kicking sideways in the tri oval. And trust me, when you find out about that when you're going 210 miles an hour, it's definitely a hello moment. As look at how much these things are fighting these guys through the corners. These things are so much fun to watch at this big track, how loose they are. You can carry it full speed, but I'm not sure you want to do that just with how loose these things get on corner entry. You're on board with Tyler Seville in the number 11 right now, currently running in the 5th position in the battle with Jeremy Banning for that 5th position. Banning getting run on the outside. Hollingsworth has gone back to the lead in the number 202. Sam Maxwell up there in the 2nd spot right now, trying to fend off Van Volkenburg. Hollingsworth has led the most laps thus far, but he has been under pressure from these 3 cars behind him, Van Volkenburg, Maxwell, and Horn.
And I'll tell you what, turn number 4 hasn't just been difficult for Lee Staples. It's actually also caught out Todd Kirkwood in the number 86 machine. He is on pit road, as well as Howard Strother Jr. in the 148 machine. There is Todd Kirkwood. Right behind him, a couple pit stalls, is the 148 machine of Howard Strother. So Howard Strother Jr., they're sitting on pit road. They're trying to get some damage repaired. But back up at the front, good battle for the lead between Hollingsworth, Maxwell, and Van Valkenburg. And look at Orr. Now he's back into the 4th position, going to slot in behind Van Valkenburg as they work their way through the tri-oval. Can't roll out Jeremy Banning, currently sitting in the 5th position as well. Seville down in 6th. And I'm wondering, Greg, if any of these drivers are thinking about possibly saving tires. I know this is a super speedway, but saving tires could be a thing here tonight.
It very well could be, Peter, because this racing surface is so old and so abrasive that you may want to save the tires to try to have something near the end of a run. It's only a 50-lap race, so typically you wouldn't think save tires in a 50-lap race, but it might benefit you to save those tires to have something at the end of a run. Because, I mean, look at what we saw with the fresher tires did last time out. Look at one of Jason Stewart. We got a replay of Lee Staples in the 26. He may have blown an engine as well, so Lee Staples is unfortunately most likely going to be done for the day as he's limping back to the pits in the number 26. So 2 blown motors already today. Side by side for the lead, Sam Maxwell trying to get up there and lead laps. And he's going to fall victim now to a big push by Van Valkenburg on the 202 of Holland.
Yeah, I absolutely love the Jackson Van Valkenburg's machine. I mean, he's got number 28 on the hood. It shows number 23 up there in the top left-hand corner of your screen, but that is definitely a number 28 on that race car. Fantastic looking Hardee's Ford Thunderbird of Jackson Van Valkenburg here tonight, trading spots with the number 98 machine of Sam Maxwell, who got himself back up into the 2nd position. He's going to jump to the high side, right to the right side of this man right here, Larry Orn, who we ride on board with in the number 31 machine. You can see those race cars to his outside, as well as the 202 of Hollingsworth. And look at this view, just like that. Looks like Sam Maxwell tried to cut underneath Hollingsworth, but Van Valkenburg made the move first, and they're side by side for second once again. Still Hollingsworth leads in the 202 machine, and look at Jeremy Banning just sizing up these 4 cars in front of him. And then behind them you have Seville, Bray, and Will Warser rounding out your top 8 currently.
That was a power move by Van Valkenburg in the Hardee's Ford. That was an impressive display here by that number 28 on your screen, 23 on the ticker. But Hollingsworth has done a great job of keeping these guys behind him so far. And boy, we don't see Hollingsworth in the Premier Series that's streamed on Tuesday nights, but he is really making a name for himself here on 3Y TV in this Thursday night Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Series. This has really kind of been the thing for Hollingsworth so far as Maxwell hits the wall. That's going to allow Orrin to get around, and he's going to try and bring Bandy with him, but Maxwell shuts the door. Crossover for the lead. Look out. Boy, a slide from Van Valkenburg going down in the turn into the tri-oval. Makes the save, leads the lap, not quite, just 2/1000ths of a second, but he had the nose in front in the turn 1. What a piece of driving by Jackson Van Valkenburg right there, Peter.
This is some slicing and dicing up at the front, and because of all that slicing and dicing, I think we got a couple cars like Jason Stewart and Jordan Berry who've decided to kind of lay back just a little bit. They're riding in 12th and 13th position. Then it's a ways back to Tim Knott, Chris Keenan, Brad Lee, and Michael Whiting. They're kind of another separate group that are just kind of biding their time in case something big happens up at the front. And it looks like something big might happen with how sideways they are all the way around the racetrack. We are on board now with, I believe, the... Oh no! Speaking of big things up at the front, I just had to open my mouse. Contact between Sam Maxwell and Jackson Van Valkenburg, and Van Valkenburg just clipping the inside retaining wall. Let's see if we can see what happened there. That happened right up at the front of the field, Greg.
Maxwell caught the ball coming through the tri-oval there, Peter, and bounced off right in front of Van Valkenburg, and that is a heartbreaker for Van Valkenburg. We were just talking about the moves that he was making, and unfortunately, the next move is going to be on the pit road to get the damage repaired. That is a tough one.
Absolutely. Let's see this one more time. There's the initial contact with the outside retaining wall and just hitting that 28 machine. Hopefully there isn't all too much damage on that number 28 machine. He knows it in pretty good, but it could have been worse for Van Valkenburg. we actually have seen Brian Yazik. He was still in the lead pack considering he had a lot of damage earlier. So maybe with the high horsepower of these cars and the fact that they don't have all too much downforce, maybe they're not too aero sensitive. So that will be something we'll be keeping our eye on here as this race continues to go on. Well, we are now under our second caution of the night. Let's see if we can bring up the current weather conditions, because one thing about this racetrack that I've been watching, Greg, is the track temperature, 114 degrees Fahrenheit. That is pretty darn hot, which will make this racetrack even slicker for these cars that don't have much downforce.
Yeah, you're basically riding on an ice rink in 75-degree heat. Tell me how much fun that sounds, because it is slippery out there under our second caution of the day. But Peter, there wasn't a dull moment in that run, which lasted about 10 laps before we went yellow for the second time tonight. There wasn't a dull moment in that run. They were slicing and dicing and right up on each other that entire time.
Absolutely. I mean, these American Sim Racing Series drivers, they know how to get the job done, and it looks like a couple of them will be headed down pit road. Jeremy Banning in the number 30 machine looks like he's going to stay out. Ed Bray's going to stay out at the back of the pack, but meanwhile, pretty much everyone else coming down pit road. And one thing I wanted to note, Greg, that we saw in the race summary box that just popped up in the left-hand bottom corner of the screen, Brian Yazik has the fastest lap of this race. And you have to remember, he got all that damage in that lap 1 accident, but was still very, very fast. So hopefully for Jackson Van Valkenburg, his crew can get most of that damage repaired on that race car. We're already starting to see some cars head off pit road. Looks like the number 11 machine of Tyler Seville's going to win that race off pit road, followed by Jason Stewart, Brian Yazik, Will Worsler, Jordan Berry, and others.
What happened to the 202, Peter?
I wonder if he took tires. I don't think a lot of the other cars took tires.
And he took tires. The rest of them, I don't think, did. Or they might have, but I think the 202 may have slid through his pit box even, because the rest of the field was coming off, and he was just getting the left sides on. Man, oh man. And suddenly, he's going to be buried deep in the field.
Yeah, looking at pit stop times, definitely Stephen Hollingsworth had a long pit stop, about a 30-second stop, which is about 10 seconds longer than what you would expect with these race cars. Larry Orn, on the other hand, had a 20.8-second stop, so I do believe he took tires. Meanwhile, Seville, Stewart, Yazik, Worsler, Barry, Pelican, and Brad Lee all elected to not take tires under that caution. So already starting to see some different pit strategies. And Greg, we mentioned it earlier, that's one of the things that has made the American Sim Racing Series so awesome to watch here on 3Y TV all season long, both in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series and right here in the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series. Of course, Stephen Hollingsworth coming into tonight as the points leader. Jason Stewart coming in second place in points, and now he finds himself in the fourth position on the racetrack. Ed Bray coming into tonight third place in points. What will he do now that he is in the second position on the racetrack? But we still have Jeremy Banning. Greg, him and Ed Bray were the two cars who stayed out under this caution period. They've yet to come down pit road in this race, 17 laps on their tires and in their fuel tanks. So be interesting to see just how far these two cars go. But do you think they're already thinking about track position?
They have to be thinking about track position if they stayed out there. We got 16 laps on those tires before the pit stops there, Peter. So you got to be thinking about track position if you stayed out here, because the entire field essentially came down with the exception of those two. They were the only two drivers to stay out, so it was an interesting call on their part. We'll see if it works out for them, but the one I'm keeping my eye on is deep in the field. The 202, Stephen Hollingsworth, going to restart 12th, I believe. I believe he will be the first one on 4 tires. Maybe the 31 of Larry Orn in front of him in 10th.
So we'll see how it goes here at Daytona. The pace car lights are off. We're about to get set to go back to green. We do have Jay Crable in the chat, Todd Kirkwood in the chat as well, saying the outside didn't work, just got sucked up into the wall. And I'll tell you what, it's like wall glue. We throw that term around a lot. Wall glue is when you kind of get sucked up into the wall and you just can't get off it. It's like glued to it. That happens. in sim racing for whatever reason. But nonetheless, the pace car is down on pit road. If you're in the chat, make yourself heard as the green flag is back in the air for the number 30 of Jeremy Banning to lead the way. But here comes the number 11 machine, Tyler Seville, coming through up into the second position. But Ed Bray saying not so fast. He's starting to get a run around the outside of the Boswell Country Roads Harley Davidson machine. Here we go on board with the number 30 machine. And just like that, Tyler Seville is going to use that low line to try and take the lead. And look at that number 55, Greg. Here's Brian Yazik. We're on board with him right now.
Yazik, the winner on Tuesday in Kentucky in the Hacksaw Premier Series. And here he comes looking for the race lead. Tyler Seville up front. I believe Seville is the only driver to lead laps in all 3 races in this series so far. If he can get back to the line, he will officially do that. But no, Yazik is going to get in front of him. Brian Yazik, winner on Tuesday, breaking out into the lead, but he was slipping and sliding. Oh, contact in the back. T.N.T around. I believe Will Worsler collected as well.
That was the number 41 and the 29. You're right. No, T.N.T into the inside wall. That is not what you want to see. I do think that the 29 was involved as well, Greg. You called it. Let me see if we can see what happened here. 41, just up into the outside wall, just like what we saw earlier. And almost blew over there with the number 41 machine. These old 87 cars, they don't have roof flaps to kind of keep them glued to the racetrack, Craig. So if they get a little bit of air underneath the rear end of them, they have a tendency to flip on over. We almost saw that there, as this will bring out the third caution flag of the night.
Yeah, blowover is so common with these cars, and that was something that surprisingly a lot of drivers were actually really excited about, was the realistic blowovers that these cars were displaying in the early days of this being on the iRacing server. You almost saw one right there. He kept the wheels down as we go on board. I believe this might be with the 29 of Forstler, I believe. Yeah, he just gets caught up in it there. Boy, that just shows you just how quickly, in a blink of an eye, things can change when you're driving at well over 200 miles an hour, Peter.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is on board with the number 41 machine. Yeah, you see that contact with the outside wall, and oh boy, almost going up and over for a ride. Luckily, he will be able to limp that machine back to pit road, and the crew can go to work, throw some duct tape on the number 41 GM Goodwrench Chevrolet, and see if they can get him back in the race. But Brian Yazik's the winner from Tuesday night's Bluegrass 200, brought to you by Slice Pizza Bar. Well, he's currently a race leader here tonight in the Firecracker 125. Completely different race car with the 1987 Ford Thunderbird up there. Of course, runs a Ford in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series that we run on Tuesday nights right here on 3 Wide TV. Same place, same time. And currently leading the way with now 29 more laps to go around this famed Daytona International Speedway. And I just love the fact that these 87 cars, Greg, they always bring us something new to talk about. They're so different, all the way down to the Stuart Warner gauges on the dashboard. They're so cool. And you also have to remember, they're going to have to use the clutch to shift these cars. You know, a lot of the new Cup cars, you don't really have to use the clutch. You can kind of just blip the throttle to change the gear. But with these cars, man, you got to ride that clutch to shift gears. You can miss a shift with these race cars. And if you're Jake Rabel, you can unfortunately shift down into first gear with the cars, and they don't have any limiter on the RPM. So, you know, you can quickly blow a motor with these cars as well.
I've already seen it a couple of times today, with Jake Rabel and Lee Staples both blowing a motor in the early stages of this one. So that just goes to show you just how quick things can go wrong in these cars. And it's, again, just part of what makes this car so much fun to watch and so much fun to drive. And it's why the moment that these cars were announced for the iRacing service too, I mean, can you remember our little group chat that we've got, 3YTV group chat, how excited we were when it was announced that these cars were coming to iRacing? I mean, I can't even remember a group of people that have been that excited over something in a long time to have these cars come to this service, and you're seeing why right here.
Absolutely. I mean, they look like an absolute whale of a time to drive out there on the racetrack. They might drive like a whale as well with how little downforce they have with all the weight that they have in them, but they're definitely looking like they're a lot of fun to drive. I need to get myself out on the racetrack. In fact, I considered running this season, Greg, before we were tabbed to do the broadcast, and gotta say, I was very much looking forward to get my wheels on the racetrack with these 87 cars. I think I'm going to here shortly in the near future in the iRacing service, but for now, we're bringing you live flag-to-flag coverage right here on 3Y TV. The pace car lights have turned off. The number 29 machine, Will Worcester, came down pit road to get as much damage repaired as possible on that machine. Got PC Guru LLC on that race car, and right on board with him right now, coming out of turn number 2. Doesn't look all too bad, Greg, so hopefully Will Worcester can make his way towards the front.
Yeah, not a lot of damage on the 29. We've seen it already with the 55 of Yazik. Just because there's damage doesn't necessarily slow the cars down like what we're used to seeing with the current Cup cars. These cars nowhere near as aero-sensitive. You can still drive these things even with a little bit of damage. So totally different animal than what we're used to seeing on Tuesdays in this ASRS series.
So one thing I also want to keep an eye on here is the 202 machine, Stephen Hollingsworth, who was up at the front for the early running of this race. Remember, he came down under the previous caution, took on tires in that race car. Well, he's got himself now up to the 6th position. He'll be on the outside of the 3rd row when we go back to green flag racing here in just about a quarter of a lap or so, less than now, as Brian Yazik and the number 55 machine will get us going back green here. I'll tell you what, Greg, when that pace car heads down pit road here at Daytona, that green flag flies, you get the rumble of these 87 engines, and we're back to green flag racing here at Daytona International Speedway. Here comes Tyler Seville trying to get underneath the number 30 of Banning off into turn number 1, and Cody Spiker in the Dynaco blue number 19 machine. He was involved in that first lap accident, Greg. He's starting to work his way forward, and I'm really surprised that both the number 55 machine of Yazik, who's leading the race, 3rd place Cody Spiker now, both involved in that early accident, but here they are in the top 3.
Yeah, that just shows you can drive these cars even with damage. Here comes the 202 of Stephen Hollingsworth, though, a big push for Strip Weathers in the number 19. Cody Spiker gets the nose in front of Brian Yazik, but Steve Hollingsworth, the pole sitter, is coming in a hurry. One car in the wall, back behind him. Couldn't tell who that was. I believe it may have been Jeremy Banning in the number 30, but it was Brad Lee who caught the wall. Cody Spiker crosses the strike in first, but not for long, because here comes Stephen Hollingsworth on the outside. Jason Stewart up to 3rd. And look who has climbed his way back into the top 5. Jackson Van Valkenburg. He's back up in the fray. Yeah,
I was concerned that Van Valkenburg's night was over when he made contact with the outside wall. Might have got a little bit sideways on the backstretch there in that Hardy's number 28 machine, working his way down the backstretch at 205 miles an hour. And here we go up at the front. Cody Spiker washed up just a smidgen, almost up into the side of Hollingsworth's 202 machine, but they're going to be side by side at the stripe, and that time I could not call that one at the stripe. It went to Hollingsworth by 2/1000ths of a second. 25 laps to go. We're halfway at Daytona.
2/1000ths of a second at 200 miles an hour at Daytona. What would you say? 3 inches, 4 inches, the difference there?
Boy, I don't even know. That might be less than 3 inches. That was so close to call as they went across the stripe, but the 202 now has his nose out. Oh, look at Van Valkenburg. Look at Van Valkenburg into the outside wall on his side, still on his side. Doing a Casey Kane impression there through turn number 3 and 4. We stay green. Can you believe that one? But Van Valkenburg, things go from very good to very bad very quickly here. Just got a little bit loose. You see him try to save that car, but a little bit too much on the wheel. Overcorrected into the outside wall. And Jackson Van Valkenburg, just like that, is going to lose the lead pack. A lot of right side damage to that race car. But Greg, that definitely not what he was hoping for as he makes his way back to pit road.
Definitely not. That was a huge shame for him. And you mentioned things going from very good to very bad. Things have gone from very good to very bad, back to very good, then back to very bad for the 28. Meanwhile, speaking of very good, how about Jason Stewart in the number 1? He's trying to get up inside the Stephen Hollingsworth. He had the nose in front for a moment. Unfortunately for him, Hollingsworth was able to fight back on the outside with help from Cody Spiker. And now, I believe this is Tyler Seville. Yes, it is. He's coming up on the outside of Stewart for third. So even though the fact that there's not plates on these cars, they're still driving like pack racing that we see today. This is wild out of these cars. And here we go down the backstretch again. Spiker trying to shut the door on Tyler Seville. Seville's going to get a big run into turn 3, get around Spiker, and try and get around Hollingsworth, and will. Tyler Seville gets out front. If he can make it back in front, he will officially be the only driver to lead laps in all 3 races in this series. Yes, he will barely hang on.
I'll tell you what, Greg, I am just so amazed by how many lead changes we've had here. I mean, here comes the 202 of Hollingsworth coming back to take the lead back from the number 11 machine. Of course, we only count lead changes when they get back to the start-finish line, but it's so awesome to see these cars kind of like a roulette wheel, just kind of moving amongst one another and trading spots and picking up places, and drivers with damage working their way through the field. This is some awesome stuff out of these American Sim Racing Series Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson drivers. I gotta say, I've been looking forward to this race. It's almost contact there between the 11 and the 202, and I think Seville had to back out of it as to not wreck. That gives the 202 of Hollingsworth a big lead, but here comes the number 98 machine of Maxwell once again up into the 2nd position. Here he goes for the race lead.
Maxwell is going to get the nose in front. He's going to clear Hollingsworth through turn number 1 and try to bring Jason Stewart with him. He got 3 Fords on the inside lane right now. Maxwell, Stewart, and Orn, who's driving the Lumina-inspired Thunderbird right now. But here they come down the backstretch. Jason Stewart poking his nose in front as 202 of Seville, 202 of Hollingsworth tries to get a run on Stewart. Tyler Seville falling back outside the top 5 now as Larry Orn coming up on Maxwell, coming to the line, going to be too close to call again. Give it to Stewart by 4 1,000ths of a second that time.
And going back to my point that we're seeing these drivers trade positions like crazy, Jason Stewart, the previous lap, was in 4th position. The 202 of Hollingsworth was leading, and this time they're flip-flopped. And now we don't even know who's going to lead this next lap. This is awesome stuff. Down the backstretch, Sam Maxwell throwing a block on the number 31 machine of Larry Orn, and here comes Orn to the inside with a push from the 202 machine of Hollingsworth. And now the 31 will go up to the front. You got to pick your move. You got to know when to hold him and know when to fold him here, because definitely a lot of positions changing hands so quickly as the 31 of Orn will lead the lap side by side for 2nd. Maxwell to the top side of Hollingsworth, and right behind them here is Alex Pelican in the number 25 machine, showing some muscle now inside the top 5, right in front of Jason Stewart, who led just a lap ago. That car now back in the 5th position, right in front of Cody Spiker in the Dynaco Blue race machine. The man who led us back to green flag, Brian Yazik, has slid back into the 9th position. He's on the outside right behind the number 29 machine of Will Worcester, who's working his way back towards the front with all the damage that he has. So really, car's not getting away from everyone as the 66 of Ed Bray had a huge wiggle in turn number 3 and 4, able to save it, but he had to check up on that race car. And that's one thing I've seen, Greg, as we almost go 3 wide for the race lead.
3 wide for the race lead almost. Cody Spiker was facing the outside wall coming through the tri-oval. He saved it, and he's going to get a run on the number 1 of Jason Stewart. I petition that there is another class on 3 wide TV, maybe ASRS, maybe not, but I petition that there is a series that runs these cars at this track every week. This is an absolute blast right now, watching these guys wrestle these things around. In the turn 3 we go. Larry Orn up there. Stephen Hollingsworth, who's had one of the strongest cars all day, back up in 2nd. You got side-by-side back there. Oh, Pelican with a big slide there, and hangs on to it and might only lose a maximum of 2 spots here as Spiker trying to get around on the outside. This is outstanding watching these guys race around this track.
Now we have been green now for closing in on about 10 laps, I do believe. So tying the longest run that we've had all of the night. Look at the number 31 machine just throwing the block on the 202 of Hollingsworth down the backstretch. Look at Sam Maxwell right behind those two front runners sitting in third, trying to figure out, all right, who am I going to go with? Where am I going to make the pass? How am I going to get up to the race lead? You're right on board with the number 98 of Maxwell right now. Pelican right behind him, having a good run, and we have problems.
Cody Spiker and Jeremy Banning around. We're green right now, but they are down in the infield. Spiker went for a ride, came down right in front of Jeremy Banning. We stay green as we are off the racing surface. We take a look at the 3Y TV replay.
Number 19 machine on the high side. Did he catch? He did. He just caught the outside wall. We've seen that a couple times here tonight. Jeremy Banning, wrong place, wrong time in the number 30 machine. And it looks like Spiker is going to be on pit road here. Looks like the number 30 machine of Banning also getting up to speed in turn number 1 right now. Definitely a lot of damage on that race car as you see the replay one more time. Spiker definitely went down pit road there as a caution flag has been thrown. There's another accident, I do believe, and it is. There's an accident on the front stretch. While we were watching that replay, chaos happened right at the front. Look at the number 98 machine of Maxwell. He hit the outside wall, turned down into Hollingsworth, and caution flag back in the air, and Hollingsworth up on his side through the trial. But look at the carnage out back. The 55 of Yazik. Looked like Will Worsler was involved as well. There was another car I couldn't quite see, but let's see this happen right here. There's the contact with the outside wall. Shoots the 98 machine up into the air, and Hollingsworth with the blowover here on the front stretch. That's the first blowover we have seen on 3Y TV ever, and it goes to that man right there, Stephen Hollingsworth, your points leader coming into tonight, on board with him right here, Greg. Let's talk us through this one.
On board with Hollingsworth, you see right there he gets hit, and the air gets up under, and along for the ride was Stephen Hollingsworth. We just talked about the blowovers that these cars present the previous caution, and there you see it right there.
T.N.T, I believe, was one of the other race cars involved, I think. Not 100% sure on that one, but he's out there with a very damaged race car right now. Here we go, on board with the number 29 machine of Will Worsler. And, oh, he went down to the bottom side of the racetrack and unfortunately saw Yazik just a little bit late there. It was Jordan Berry, the number 31 machine, that was involved, not the 41 of T.N.T. Let's see what happened a little bit further back in the pack, because Yazik saw the accident happen. He got on the brakes, slowed down on the inside of the racetrack, and then it was just kind of an accordion effect there with Will Worsler and the car in front of him. And when he came down the racetrack, unfortunately, that's where Yazik was. Hopefully, Yazik doesn't have all too much damage on that number 55 machine, but that was the biggest accident we've seen all night long here, Greg, here in the closing stages of this race. We're well past the halfway mark at this point. We don't have all too many cars left without damage in this one. I didn't expect to see all too many cars with this much damage, but one driver I was really impressed with, Tyler Seville and Ed Bray, getting through that accident. Props to them for making it through, because that was some very, very impressive wreck avoidance.
Yeah, outstanding job by them to get through that one, Peter. One more look at the replay. Here you see, wow. And imagine, what is Alex Pelican thinking in that 25 car, seeing that happen directly in front of him at 200 miles an hour? How many explicit words that we can't say on 3Y TV do you think went through his head right there? I believe this is on board with him.
Yeah, I'll just say he needs a new pair of underwear after that one, because that track in front of him was completely blocked. Fantastic heads-up driving by that number 25 machine to get on the binders, slow down just a little bit, figure out where the 202 was going. Once he figured out he was going back up the racetrack, was able to get underneath him. But that's a little bit of patience. And I say patience. That happens so quickly. But sometimes just getting on the binders, figuring out where the other cars are going is the best option, especially on a racetrack like this, where things happen so quickly. You just have to kind of slow things down with the brakes. But unfortunately, we have had some drivers who were not so lucky in that one, like Sam Maxwell. Sam has had to take his number 98 machine to the garage, and that's a tough hit for him coming into tonight, 10th place in points. Didn't have a great race at North Wilkesboro. Had some bad luck there, and here again tonight at Daytona. Of course, he did finish on the podium back at Charlotte a couple of weeks back in round 2 of the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday night Throwback Cup Series. But nonetheless, you got a bunch of cars out there now with certain levels of damage. But Greg, we're going to re-rack them and do it all again because pace car lights are off.
And it's shootout time here at Daytona, Peter, because we are just outside of 10 laps to go when this race goes back green. So hope you got your popcorn ready, maybe some Cool Ranch Doritos, who knows, because it is about to be a wild one here at Daytona for these final, I believe, 12 laps when we go back green.
Absolutely. Let's see what the chat is doing here tonight. Todd Kirkwood saying, and Stewart snuck through. Yeah, Jason Stewart in the number 1 machine, sitting in the 2nd position right now. And, of course, a lot of people in the chat going, oh, my gosh, what a crazy accident that was. It definitely was. And Kathy spotting the flagman here tonight. We didn't see him on Tuesday night, completely missing from Kentucky Speedway. Heard that he pulled a Michael Waltrip, and he was at the wrong track. Can you believe that? But he's here at Daytona here tonight, and the pace car headed down pit road. Hopefully that's the last time we see the pace car out there as the green flag is waving with the flagman at the right track here tonight. And up at the front, the number 31, Larry Orn, looking for his first Boswell's Country Roads Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series win here tonight, as well as Jason Stewart, the number 1 machine. How good has Jason Stewart been over the last few weeks here on 3 Wide TV? Spectacular run back at Charlotte, and now sitting out front here at Daytona with just 12 laps to go.
Unbelievable run here by Jason Stewart, showing that he learned at Charlotte how to drive these cars, and here he is leading the way. Again, going to be 11 laps to go when they come to strike this time. Ford 1-2 up front, the Thunderbirds of Stewart and Orn. Even though it's a Lumina per se, it's got the Chevy Lumina decals on it. It is a Ford Thunderbird. Back behind them, Jeremy Banning.
Oh, that's Yazek and Banning both involved. A couple of other cars getting collected in it. I think that will bring out a caution, and indeed it has. Banning a lot of damage on that number 30 Chevrolet. I saw the HPVsimulation.com Ford Thunderbird involved as well. Let's see if we can dial up a little bit better replay for you here. Look at the 44 Michael Whiting. Haven't really talked about him here tonight. He was in this lead pack, but looks like the number 30 of Banning just cut down in front of Yazek, and it was kind of on from there. There's Michael Whiting in the 44 machine getting involved just a little bit. Good job by the 44 to keep it going straight after that contact. Let's see if we can see this from looking at the number 44 machine of Whiting. There's the initial contact in front, and oof, Whiting almost got hit by the 55 machine, and there's that contact there just on the back side of that accident. Here we go on board with the number 55 of Yazek, and watch Yazek get a run here, Greg. He kind of drops down to the bottom of Banning right here, and I don't think Banning realized there was a car underneath him with that sort of a run, and unfortunately for Yazek, who did a good job, but all things considered, to keep that car going as straight as possible, unfortunately also collected the number 19 there, Cody Spiker, who's been in the wars tonight, a couple times tonight, Greg, that Spiker's been involved.
Yeah, the Dynaco Chevy Monte Carlo right there has definitely had an up and down race here. The Strip Weathers paint scheme looks awesome on that number 19 car, but it just has not been the day that he wanted. But how cool is it, again, we talked about it, to see the Dynaco paint scheme, one of the forgotten cars paint schemes, Peter, because everyone goes with Lightning McQueen, Chick Hicks. I've seen Jackson Storm pop up in there. You never really see any love for the King Strip Weathers in iRacing lately, and that's one of the cleanest paint schemes in the movie. We've talked about it a little bit, and I love the fact that Cody Spiker's driving that car.
Absolutely. Well, we do have one car on pit road right now. It is the 202 machine of Stephen Hollingsworth. And Greg, the 202 machine was being scored in the 8th position before he came down pit road. And remember, he went up and over with a blowover here in the middle of the tri-oval. So can Stephen Hollingsworth wrestle a top 10 out of this 202 machine here tonight? I don't know, but that car has a lot of damage on it. Of course, Hollingsworth was your pole sitter. He's shown a lot of speed here tonight, and possibly, just possibly, might walk away with a top 10, even with blowing over, which is something you don't see very often.
Send it.
Let's see if we possibly can dial up a driver here on 3Y TV. Let's see if we can dial up the current race leader, the number 1 machine of Jason Stewart. Jason Stewart, Peter Short here in the 3Y TV booth. You got a copy?
Yeah, I got a copy.
I'll tell you what, man, these things don't look easy to drive, but I'm looking at a lot of cars around you. They have a lot more damage than you do. How's that number 1 machine driving here tonight?
Like a dump truck. I don't know how I'm up here, but out here having fun. That's why I dropped back first half of the race, try to learn the car. I'm just trying to get used to it.
Yeah, I noticed you were in a second pack quite a ways back from the lead group of cars. Was that kind of your goal, just kind of ride it out, let the accidents happen as need be, try and keep a clean car for the finish?
Yeah, that was the goal, but we got too far behind, but luckily the caution came out, got us back up front.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're now out front in that number 1 machine. I do believe we'll get the 1 to go here as you cross the stripe. But best of luck, Jason. Maybe we'll get to see you in victory lane here at Daytona.
I doubt it, but we're going to give it hell.
All right, well, good luck here in these next few laps. But as you can see, the pace car lights have turned off, so we'll let Jason get back to it. Of course, your race leader currently. We do have Seth Olson in the chat rooting on the number 44 of Michael Whiting. And of course, Michael in that number 44 machine is currently being scored in the 5th position. So was able to get through that accident with not all too much damage. He stayed out there on the racetrack and now inside the top 5, as is the number 19 machine of Cody Spiker. And Craig, I think some of these drivers have kind of just said, you know what, screw it. I don't want to come down pit road. Got a lot of damage. A lot of the cars around me have a lot of damage. Let's just see what she's got here in the closing laps, because we only have not only the 7 laps to go this time by us. I have unfortunate times doing math, but it'll be a shootout, like you said, here at Daytona.
Hey, math is difficult. I get that, but it's going to be wild here. Lights out on the pace car. Double file restart coming up. Jason Stewart, Alex Pelican on the front row with Larry Orn, one of the fastest cars here today in 3rd. How about Ed Bray? We mentioned him a couple of times throughout the course of the day. Stayed out on that first caution the 2nd caution to gain some track position. Pitted the following caution and has worked his way back up with Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson on the hood of that 66 car. Here he is in the top 5, coming to a restart with 7 laps to go. Good comeback for him as well.
7 laps to go. Pace car about to head down pit road. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that 202 machine of Hollingsworth to see just how high he can get through the field with a car that did a blowover. But up at the front, it is the number 1 machine of Jason Stewart who gets away to a good start. Looks like Pelican might have had a little bit of a problem there getting up through the gears. That allowed the inside roof to get a huge jump on him. Here comes Larry Orn in the number 31 machine. Michael Whiting in the number 44 trying to follow him through up into the 3rd position as the outside now starting to get wound up. Pelican with a huge run coming out of turn number 2 to the outside of the number 31 machine and now challenging for the race lead.
Tyler Seville up here as well in the number 11. He's worked his way back to the top 5. He's given a run or a push to Pelican into turn number 3 to move the 25 up to the lead here. Stewart with a bobble on the inside. Here comes that dump truck that Jason Stewart was talking about back on the inside. But look at the battle here as Larry Orn using a little bit of side draft. You don't see that too often with these cars. Using a little bit of a side draft to get a run off Tyler Seville at the line. Give it to Pelican. It was a dead heat. It went to the 4th digit. And Pelican with a slide. Delta Airlines taking off behind him. Pelican in the wall.
Pelican in the outside wall, and he's got a little bit of that wall glue coming back across the racetrack and into the inside wall here on the Daytona Super Stretch. No caution as he's off the racetrack, but that is a tough break there for Alex Pelican in that number 125 machine gonna be scored well back, gonna be hoping for a caution here as these laps wind down, but the race now in the hands of Jason Stewart as your race leader. But here comes Larry Orn in the number 31 machine to his outside. Look at Ed Bray in the number 66 machine. I've been looking up and down through the field. I don't think there's any other car in the field right now that has no damage but for Edward Bray in the number 66 Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson machine, looking out front at the number 1 of Jason Stewart, working his way through turn number 1 and 2, now onto the super stretch. And look at the number 55 of Brian Yazik back in the fray here in the 5th position, Greg, just not going away.
Yeah, where did Brian Yaza come from? We found ourselves saying that on Tuesday. Big slide out of Tyler Seville, and it's not done yet. Makes the save. Unbelievable job by Tyler Seville. But Larry Orn out in front. Here now, this settled down for the time being. Single file, 4 laps to go. Larry Orn leading the way here at Daytona. But Jason Stewart getting a good run in the number 1. Those two have started to break away from 3rd place Ed Bray, but back comes the 66. He's got a good run on Stewart here in turn number 1 and 2 this time. And the 1 is going to shoot to the outside and on board with Michael Whiting in the number 44. He's up in the 6th spot. We haven't talked about him at all today, Peter. Here he comes joining the fray at the end of the race in that 44 car.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a couple of drivers who laid back. I mean, Whiting was one of those drivers who was in that 2nd pack early on in the race, similar to what Jason Stewart did in the number 1 machine. And here comes Jason Stewart around that high side, trying to take that lead back from Larry Orn. Almost a dead heat across the stripe, 5/1000ths of a second. Just 3 laps to go. Who will win this race here tonight? It has been a good one. So many lead changes. Larry Orn washing up the racetrack just a little bit. And look at the run that Yazik in the 55 machine's getting out of the corner. Up to the back bumper of the number 31 machine. And Greg, gotta remember, the yellow line is not out of bounds here tonight.
6-car breakaway here for the race win, Peter. Coming to 2 laps to go, 5 miles left. Wow, how did that not end in disaster for Ed Bray and Larry Orn? Jason Stewart leading the way. He's got about a 2-car length lead over Larry Orn. 2 laps to go. Stewart leading. Brian Yazik inside of Ed Bray for 3rd. Tyler Seville and Michael Whiting hanging back in case something happens. Whiting took a peek down. Look out, 66 Bray in the wall. Hangs on to it. Whiting's going to get around, move him into the top 5, side by side for the lead. Who's Yaza going to go with? Stewart. Orn. Will he go up the middle himself?
1.5 laps to go here at Daytona. The 31 Larry Orn on the high side. The 1 machine down on the inside of Jason Stewart. Here comes a 55 of Brian Yazik, the number 11 machine. Right behind him, Tyler Seville. Look at the 44 machine, Michael Whiting. Where did he come from? Coming across the stripe this time for the white flag. Just only 5/1000ths of a second once again. Jason Stewart led that lap. He wants to lead. One more contact over the front. The 31 machine, car scattering everywhere. Yazik gets through. Yazik could be the lone car to finish here at Daytona as cars still wrecking in the back. But Yazik's out to a huge lead in the HVPSimulations.com Ford Thunderbird. Tyler Seville was able to sneak through. Ed Bray going to be the 3rd car to get out of that collision. But just like that, this race has turned on a head. Yazik just has to get through turn number 4. Coming out of the final corner, trying to sweep the week on 3 Wide TV. Yazik going to come take home the Firecracker 125 at Daytona.
2 heavy accidents for that 55 car, and he parks it in victory lane. 2nd time this week, mind you, that Brian Yazik has gone to victory lane in ASRS competition. We take a look at the 3 Wide TV replay and how it unfolded, Peter.
I'll tell you what, we had 1 car spinning across the start-finish line as well. The wrecking wasn't done past here. You see the 31 and the 1 just having a coming together, and it was on from there. Look at Stewart doing everything he can to get that car going back straight. Got clipped right there at the end. The 44 of Whiting, unfortunately, getting involved in that as well. Just a lot of hard racing right there at the end. Everyone wanted to win the Firecracker 125, and there you saw the 66 of Ed Bray going around. I think there might have been a little bit of contact with the 202 machine. coming to the stripe, but unfortunately that will relegate the number 66 down to the 8th position. He actually came across the line there. You see that contact, just a nudge in the right rear quarter panel sent Ed Bray spinning, and unfortunately that was for the 3rd position. So Hollingsworth, Greg, is going to come away with a podium in that 202 machine, even though he did a blowover. Can you believe that?
At this point, I'm going to believe anything with these cars. Unbelievable performance, but that right there, that number 55 is one very, very happy young man. Brian Yazik sweeping the week, won at Kentucky on Tuesday night, and here he is, a win at Daytona in the Boswell's Country Road Harley Davidson Throwback Series. And he has earned the ability to do these donuts here tonight.
Absolutely, just like that. We saw Brian Yazik have a long dry spell here on 3Wide TV. Well, when it rains, it pours here in sim racing sometimes. 2 wins in just a week. And it was a spectacular race. I'd like to see if we can possibly figure out how many lead changes there were in that one, because it felt like we had a different leader every single lap. 17 lead changes. Greg, only 50-lap race. That means we had a lead change every 3 laps here tonight. That is very, very impressive for Daytona International Speedway. I mean, you don't see that with the modern Cup cars. You see one car kind of get out front, and that car is able to, lead a decent number of laps. Well, you didn't see that here tonight. Just spectacular racing.
Unbelievable racing here, Peter. So much fun to watch it all unfold here on 3Y TV. And 17 lead changes at Daytona, unheard of here in these cars, and just so much fun to watch it all go down.
It was a spectacular race, and I cannot wait to see these cars back in action here on 3Wide TV in 2 weeks' time. We got the Tricky Triangle 100 from, of course, the Tricky Triangle, Pocono Raceway, and that should be a lot of fun up there in the Pocono Mountains. If these races have told me anything, it's to expect the unexpected, because at North Wilkesboro, we had that short track race, and we didn't really know who was going to come away with the win. Back at Charlotte, we had drivers on different strategies come away with solid finishes that I thought wouldn't work at all. And then here at Daytona, 17 lead changes, 50 laps, and it all came down to the last lap, and Yazik just scooting through right there at the finish. In fact, let's see if possibly we might be able to bring up Brian Yazik. Might only be able to talk to the winner here tonight, but let's see if we can get a quick word from the number 55 machine. Let's see, where is he? There he is. Brian Yazik, Peter Short, 3Y TV booth. You got a copy?
Yeah, I do.
Well, second time in a week, bud, and the seas parted for you very nicely in turn number 1. But Greg and I were saying, how on earth does a car that's been in the wall, that has been beaten up, get to the top 5 at Daytona there at the end? We were just surprised that you kind of appeared out of nowhere once again with all that damage, but you got through it and you got the win. Tell us a little bit about your night.
Yeah, hey, it's good talking to you again, Peter. We should keep doing this more often, man. That worked out nice. No, luckily, I rolled in tonight, didn't have any of my my LPM brothers, and luckily Tyler and Will let me kind of hang out with them. And we kind of figured out a plan that if there was a caution early, to just take fuel, and then kind of hope for a late caution to take the tires, because you were noticing just how much the car was dancing around, and it was just chewing that right rear out of it. So we got to the first end of it. We're like, all right. And then, not to mention, the complicating factor was I think I was involved in 3 of the accidents. What am I doing? But they just happened around me. By the way, I told you guys to get that on board when the one car wrecked in front of me. Did you get that?
Possibly. I don't remember.
But yeah, and then the one and the 31 got together, and I moved up just a little bit, and we just kind of hoped for the best. And we came out the other side. Will was laughing at me. He goes, "Why are you cackling?" I'm like, "I survived."
I'll tell you what, it was a little bit of survival here tonight. We saw a lot of accidents out there on the racetrack, a lot of cars getting a little bit of wall glue causing some accidents, but nonetheless, we also saw a lot of just fantastic racing. We had 17 lead changes tonight in a 50-lap race at Daytona. That's something you don't see very often with any car here at Daytona, whether it's these 87s or the modern cars. Tell us a little bit about how these cars race at Daytona. I mean, a lot of people watching the broadcast here tonight probably saw cars going around the racetrack at Daytona thinking they're flat out, they're glued to the racetrack. They're anything but. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to wrestle a greasy pig is kind of the easiest way I can think of to describe driving this car here. Because, I mean, you saw it on the straightaway. They come off the corner, and the car would just kind of wander. I was going to try to give the 31 a shot coming out of 2, I think, coming to 2 to go. And the car it went left, right. It went every direction but straight. So I didn't feel comfortable giving a shot to the 31 because then that probably would have wrecked the field. But it was kind of cool in the sense that, you could really kind of float that middle to high groove. And you had to lift on entry, and there was kind of a sweet spot if you could tuck the right rear up along that stripe up there by the fence. It was really happy. You could take like a real wide diamond and kind of straighten out turn 4 because there was a wind coming out of turn 4, kind of pushing everybody out towards the fence. So anything that you could do to try to mitigate that was the right way.
Well, I'll tell you what, you definitely played a very interesting race. You were dealt an interesting hand right there at the start of the race, getting involved in an early accident. And then you played your strategy right, taking tires there towards the end. And it was a lot of fun watching you slice and dice your way through the field here tonight. Before I let you go, you got any shout-outs for us?
Absolutely. Thanks to you guys for putting it out, for broadcasting us, Jim and Sam and everything they do. Edward Bray, he puts on the series. I feel awful for getting it with a couple laps to go there. It wasn't, I told him in the thing, it wasn't intentional. I think it just kind of came together there. But so shout out to all that. Loud Pedal Motorsports bringing home 2 wins in a week. I'm not going to complain with that. HPP Simulation, best pedals in sim racing, bar none. Midwest Simulation. If you don't have yourself a pair of Midwest Simulation spotlights, I don't know what you're doing with your life, because you could be way better than what you're already racing with. Just having that clear instinct of knowing when you're clear around, and just kind of knowing all that. So it's a big shout out to Scott Rupp at Midwest Simulations, kind of a new partner to LPM this year. Good friend, good guy. Those things, bar none. MidwestSimulations.com. Go out there, up there. I think that's all the sponsor plugs. Thumbs Up Cancer Down. Also, that's always a good charity. They do great work. If you guys haven't heard about them, go and give them a Facebook check out.
Absolutely, Brian. I'll tell you what, 2 wins in a week. We'll see if you can keep this momentum rolling next week in the Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series. And, of course, 2 weeks' time, more Thursday night Boswell's Country Roads Throwback Cup Series right here on 3YTV. We go to the Tricky Triangle, so that should be a lot of fun. But go celebrate your win, Brian, and we'll see you next week.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, guys.
All right, well, that is the number 55 machine, and let's see if we can get the race results in here. And Brian Yazek taking home the race win. Tyler Seville coming home in second. Stephen Hollingsworth, he did a blowover in the race. He comes home on the podium in that 202 machine. Chris Keenan finishes in fourth. Didn't really talk about Chris Keenan, but the seas parted for him as well, coming home with a solid finish here tonight. Larry Orn had a very good run in that number 31 machine here tonight. Hoping to see more of Larry Orn as the season goes on. It was his first start in the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series here tonight, and a good solid top 5 for him. Jordan Berry comes home in 6th, also one of those drivers who worked his way up towards the front late and was able to benefit from that late race accident. Cody Spiker coming home in 7th. Ed Bray comes home in 8th, spinning across the start-finish line. Tim Knott coming home in 9th, and Alex Pelican rounding out your top 10 there, Greg.
Jason Stewart leading at the white flag, comes home in the 11th spot. Coming home with, or in the 11th spot, Will Worsler in 12th in the 29. Michael Whiting, he was up in the mix there at the end, 13th. Jeremy Banning, 14th, led a lap or two. And Sam Maxwell rounds out the top 15 laps down. Brad Lee, Jackson Van Valkenburg, Howard Strother Jr., Lee Staples, Todd Kirkwood, and Jay Crable round out your field, Peter. Unbelievable night here at the at the Daytona International Speedway. It has been a wild one.
It has been a wild one. Make sure you joined us next Tuesday night for more Hacksaw PC's Premier Cup Series action for the American Sim Racing Series. They'll be racing at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That's always a fun and exciting racetrack to go to. And make sure you join us in 2 weeks' time for the next round of the Boswell's Country Roads Harley Davidson Thursday Night Throwback Cup Series, where we have the Tricky Triangle 100 at the Pocono Raceway. But for myself, Peter Short, Greg Rentz, and Carlos Acosta, we want to give each and every one of you a good night, and we'll see you soon here on 3Y TV. See ya!